want to show you something pretty cool with these 4 jacks. So we're going to use the Jack of Diamonds, Jack of Spades, Jack of Hearts, and the Jack of Clubs. Now there's a lot of things that I could do with these 4 cards, right? If I was a card cheat, for example, I could take those 4, leave them on the top of the deck, and then do some false deals and deal them to myself when I wanted. I could take one of them, put it up my sleeve, like that maybe. Lots of different options, but for now, we'll just leave those jacks right there, okay? Now think about if we were actually playing poker. I wouldn't start with the jacks. It's very unlikely I would be dealt the jacks off the bat, right? I might be dealt some lower value spot cards like this, and I'd have to figure out a way to switch them for those jacks. So I'm just gonna grab a couple of lower value black spot cards. We'll use these ones here. So we're going to use these 1, 2, 3, and 4 cards. Now, if I'm lucky, the best I could do is maybe a pair or a high card with these, right? So I need to find a way to switch these in for the 4 jacks. So we'll start with the 2 of clubs, and the move looks just like this. Just a little bounce over the deck, and we get the first jack. All right, now we will try with the 6 of clubs, all right? Just a little bounce, you know what to look for this time, and we get the second jack. Now the third one is a little bit more difficult, but I will do it face up so you can see the moment that it changes into that 3rd jack, and finally the 4th jack, just like that. Now if I was cheating and someone were to catch me, or I needed a way to quickly switch those jacks back, all I would have to do is snap my fingers and those 4 cards are back into these 4 spot cards. Now you're probably wondering what is going on with these 4 cards. I mean, you've seen the jacks all over the place, but I still have 1, 2, 3, and 4 cards. And of course, they are the 1, 2, 3, and 4 jacks. Now you're probably asking myself, or yourself rather, if I'm such a good card cheat, why would I bother cheating with these 4 cards as the jacks when I could cheat with the 1, 2, 3, and 4 aces? What is good, guys? It is Reed, and welcome back to another video. Today we got episode 5, I believe, of how to make your magic better, and this episode is going to be all about presentation. Presentation is something that I think is very important, but I think I have some different thoughts than a lot of people might have on presentation. There's a lot of different ways you can go with presentation, and so in this video I want to explain what it is, why it's important, how to use it, how to develop your own presentations, and then how to improve your presentations. I also want to talk about does every trick need a good story or presentation to go along with it, and some of those things like that. This series is more of like a sit-down style where I just kind of talk to you guys and give you my thoughts on a specific topic. And so I'm really just trying to teach you guys how to make your magic better when you're performing, because I do perform a lot, and so I have that experience, and hopefully can help you guys out with that. So without any further ado, let's jump into episode 5 of how to make your magic better, all about presentation. So let's start with what is presentation. So presentation is simply how a trick is presented. It's how you're going to build up the trick, how the trick is going to play to the audience, what you're going to say while it's going on, how your words are going to tie into what you do. Now I want to distinguish something here. Presentation and effect are different. Effect is how the trick is conveyed to your audience, so what they experience. So for example, in any card at any number, if you do it right, they should experience, or they should feel like what they saw was any card they named, any number they dealt, and they find that card at that number. Now, obviously we don't, like for the methods, we might restrict what numbers they can say, we might restrict what cards they can pick, but to them, the effect is that they felt like they had a free choice of any of those things, right? So how presentation differs is that with presentation, it's more of what we're saying as this is going on. Why is this important, what we're doing? Why is what we're showing them matter? Why should they care? Why would they stay interested? Presentation is where we talk about what our trick means, if it does have meaning. There's so many different ways, right? Especially with sort of mentalism and that sort of thing, you can say, oh, it's a connection between you and me. It's a connection between the universe. It's spiritual, it's paranormal, it's right? And so there's all these different thoughts that go into the presentation of the trick, and that does have a lot of impact on the effect, but they're not the same thing. Presentation can really alter your effect and how your effect is perceived. Remember, effect is how the trick is received, how the effect is received, but presentation is more that story and what we're going to tell, what we're going to do, the reasons for things. It just kind of gives a lot of explanation. Like I said, it helps our audience understand why they should pay attention and why they should care to what we're doing. If you lack presentation, you will lack interest from your audience, okay? And now I'm not saying you have to have a great story for all tricks, and I'll explain what I mean a little bit later. But there's a lot of elements that go into a good presentation. Presentation explains what a trick means, what its purpose is, and there's so many different ways you can take it. Presentation does play a lot to your style, and in another one of these videos, I want to dive into style, how to find your style, why it's important to have a style in magic. But presentation can really play into that, and you usually tend to pick and do presentations that suit your style. So I hope you have a pretty good understanding now of why presentation is important. The basic purpose of presentation is to provide reason and provide meaning to your tricks, and even the sleights that you do, your presentation can help cover and help justify a lot of those things, right? So a lot of times as magicians we do weird things, and so we need presentation to justify why we're doing some of these weird things, to either make the audience forget that they happened or make it seem not important. So why is presentation important? Now I've kind of touched on this, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. So one of the things that you'll see a lot, and a good example of this, is if you go and watch one of my last videos where I did Omegle Magic and Sarah was the one presenting, but it was my hands doing the trick. This is a great example of how poor presentation can seriously impact the effect. Now, she did great, but she had no idea what the trick was, and she was just freestyling the presentation. So with that in mind, she did awesome. But if I were to do those tricks, obviously I've been doing this for a while, I have my presentational skills and that sort of thing, and so I would be able to get the audience a lot more intrigued on the trick. Like if you watch some of my other Omegle videos where it's me, and then you watch that video, you can see how the reactions are not quite the same. You can just tell the people are a little bit less interested in that sort of thing, and that's because of the presentation. The tricks I did were still great, but they didn't care as much. They didn't know why they should care. They didn't have a reason to feel invested in this trick. They were just like, oh, well, that's cool, right? So presentation, hyping the trick up, is really important, right? Saying little things like, you shuffled the cards, I haven't touched the cards, you could have said any one of these cards. Things like that are just presentational things that we do to instill in someone's mind how impossible it's going to be. And that is a great sort of presentation tip. Saying some of these little things are really important for presentation because it gets your audience to understand what we understand, or what we want them to understand, right? We want them to feel like it's impossible. So telling them that is going to psychologically make them feel like, yeah, this is pretty amazing if this works, right? So that's why some of those things that we do as magicians, those cliche, like you could have chosen any card, how crazy would it be if this was your card? Those things are actually important when it comes to presentation, because it helps captivate the audience and makes them click in their mind why it's so impressive what we're doing. If you don't say those things and they just watch, they might not realize how magical it actually is, right? And it also ties into intrigue. We want them to be intrigued, we want them to care, we want them to know what our trick means and what we're demonstrating, and a good presentation makes that clear. So if you lack that, your trick's just not going to hit the same, right? No matter how good the effect is, if the audience doesn't understand it, it doesn't matter. Meaning in your magic is important, but not in the way that I think a lot of you guys are going to think when I say that. You hear like the cliche, like, oh, your tricks need to be really like meaningful and like tug at the heartstrings, or like really, capture people's emotions or whatever. I don't think that's the case, especially not with all tricks. But there has to be a meaningful presentation, and I'm going to dive into that in a bit, like I said, and explain to you how you can do really simple things and still have a great presentation. Because storytelling and that sort of thing is really not my style, so I really don't do it. But I have great presentation, and I will explain why in a little bit. Another reason presentation is important is because it gets away from that idea that this is just another card trick, right? Especially if people have seen, poor card tricks or seen magicians in the past. We want them to know that we're not just doing another card trick. What we're doing is truly amazing. What we're doing is truly powerful, whatever you want it to be. But that presentation will help people understand that, okay, this guy's serious. This isn't just my uncle's card trick. This is going to be cool, right? It gets people interested. And also presentation, kind of like I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, it can really enhance your magic, right? Things like recapping, when you're at the end of the trick and you quickly go through everything that happened. They shuffled, they did this, they did that. will really get them to realize how amazing this is and let the magic sort of settle in before the moment is spoiled. And that's a presentational thing that is important. It can also help create these false memories, right? Like if you're doing an ACAN, like I mentioned, and you have to restrict the chosen card, like you do a force or something. Well, if at the end you tell them, you could have chosen any card, that's going to make it really feel like an ACAN and really feel like they had a choice at any card, because it'll create that false memory in their head. And then when they go tell the story of the trick to other people, it'll be even more impressive. It's very important to establish a sort of explanation with the audience, because we know a deck of cards really well. We can just watch a trick and understand what's going on, but someone who's not as familiar, really they need it to be laid out for them what exactly is happening. Otherwise they'll struggle to follow a lot of the time. So it is important. So how to have good presentation. The easiest way, and the most, I won't say the easiest, but the most obvious way is through storytelling, right? If you can attach an interesting story to your trick, that's great. It could be a funny story, a horror story, a love story, whatever it happens to be. If it's something especially that people can relate to, people have gone through, you say, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Well, I'm going to show you with this deck of cards, let this represent this, let this represent that, and whatever. But that gets people intrigued. They can relate. They want to see where the story goes. That's just inherent in our human nature to want to know how stories end. So storytelling is a great way to add presentation to your tricks, especially if you don't know where to go. Adding a good story can help. Now, I don't really do any storytelling. That's not my style. Like, I have very few tricks. I can't really think of any that have much of like a sort of, I guess, fictional story, or like they have stories, but it's not like, okay, this is James and this is Fred and they're best friends and they get lost in the forest. Like, you know what I mean? Like stories like that, not my thing. But I still have very captivating magic. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of stories, and like I said, it ties into your style, what kind of style you like, what kind of style you want to present to your audience or have come across. But there are a lot of other things. A demonstration of skill is a great example of a different kind of story. It's not really a story, but that is something I use a lot. So I'm going to say, I've been handling a deck of cards for a long time. Let me show you some of the cool things I can do. Or like a demo. That's a perfect example, right? You're telling a story maybe about like how you could cheat in casino. Very captivating to people. It's not really like a fictional, beginning, middle, end story. It's more like, I'm going to show you how people cheat at cards. Watch this story. They might do some deals like this, and then they deal these cards, and then so it's like a story, but it's different, if you know what I mean. It's a skill demonstration, and skill demonstrations are a great way of telling a story. So besides a gambling demo, like if you just said, I've developed a great ability to find any card you want out of a shuffled deck or something like that. It's a story that, it obviously has a backstory. If you're telling them you're good at this, you've been practicing, so you can maybe talk about that a bit. You can kind of maybe pseudo explain how you do it. But the point is they will be interested in watching now your skill. So demonstration of skill is great. Having captivating moments too. So things that don't have to be a full story, like a full drawn out beginning, middle, end story, but you can have moments of your trick that are really captivating, like visual color changes and stuff like that, where people really get drawn into what's happening, and you can add like slight little story moments around those. So what I mean is if you're doing like a little color change, and while you're doing that, you could explain that color change in many, many different ways. It could be, watch this skill I've developed, watch this, it's very neat. Like, all I'm trying to say is a captivating moment will, I don't want to say make up for poor presentation, but if you can have something that is really intriguing to the eye, specifically visual things, your presentation then does not have to be so captivating, because those moments will sort of fill in for that. So it's just a different route that's still, I think, ties into presentation, but it's not as direct as a story. Comedy, of course, is another great thing, and it doesn't have to be a comedic story. Just having funny moments, having good jokes is captivating enough, and a good presentation and a good style. And a lot of people love having funny jokes in magic, and that is a form of presentation. It is a form of style as well, but it definitely is presentation, just making jokes and being able to crack jokes. And you can see what I mean, how these things aren't the sort of classic definition of presentation, but these are presentational elements that make your tricks interesting and make people want to pay attention. So you don't have to be the guy to tell a long-winded story about every single little card trick you do, because you can use these other things to make it more interesting, and that's a lot of what I do. My best strategies are comedy. I like to be funny, but usually I don't have any like hard set lines that I use every trick. I just freestyle it. I'm pretty funny, so I can kind of play off other people. I'll do a lot of recapping and explaining and what's going to go on. And then I love the whole idea of like connections or like really weird coincidences. And then often I'll do demonstrations of skill as well. And with that, I can cover basically any trick I want. I have one example in mind of a trick that I read, and it was a great trick. I use it, but the author was very adamant about, you have to use this presentation. This presentation makes the whole trick, yada, yada, yada. And I read it and I'm like, yes, it's good, but like, it's not me. I wouldn't do this, but I still want to use the trick. So I just changed it, and I don't use the presentation at all, but I still make the trick really captivating, and I just change it to a coincidence sort of moment, and it plays really well. Now this gets to an important moment that you can kind of see where I'm going with this, but does every trick need a story? Some people might say yes, but I say absolutely not. There's a lot of simple tricks out there that a story, in my opinion, would hinder because they just get boring for a long, drawn-out story with one little quick moment of magic, right? Every trick needs a presentation. Hold on, before I say this is the quote of this video. Every trick needs a presentation, but not every trick needs a story. Go frame that and put that somewhere, okay? And like I said, there's a million different ways to do presentation. Comedy, recapping, captivating moments, all these things just to build intrigue. And that's really what presentation is at the end of the day. And it does not have to be with a story every single time. Stories can help. If you don't know where to go with the trick, go ahead, try to build a story to it. It's a good way, but it's not necessary when you have captivating moments and all these other things in your trick. You really don't need that, okay? Demonstrations of skill, like I said, another great alternative to storytelling. And then some of those other things I like to use, like amazing coincidences or connections between people, all things that people genuinely care about and want to see. A really amazing feats of skill or magic people will want to see. And then you don't have to go all crazy with the storytelling, right? Now, how to create your own presentations. So my best piece of advice for this is specifically with storytelling, right? Like, some of them are obvious. If it's a gambling demo, you're probably going to go with a demonstration of skill or like a cheating casino demonstration, and that's cool. If it's like something mentalism, you can establish a connection, supernatural, all kinds of different ways. But if you just have a nice little sleight of hand card trick, maybe Chicago opener or something to that effect, and you want to create a story and you don't know where to go, here's my best piece of advice. Take an important moment from that trick, maybe the most visual moment or the biggest magical moment, and think about what's going on in basic terms. So let's take the Chicago opener. Good magical moment. One of the cards is going to change color. The back is going to change color of their selected card, okay? Now let's think about that in very basic forms. There's going to be something changing color. That's it. There's something changing color. So now take that, break whatever it is down into its simple terms. Take that and think, what does that remind me of in real life? Something changing color. I don't know. The first, genuinely, this is just me coming off the top of my head. The first thing that's coming to mind, metal when it's oxidizing and rusting. Weird, but who knows? Octopus changed color. And something else. The lights at the intersection change color. You see what I mean? These are totally random, but I'm just freestyling. And I don't know if there's a good story in any of those things. I don't know how I can make a story out of oxidizing metal, but it's unique. And it gets me started down a path to create a unique story. So if we sit on that idea of oxidizing metal, right? And you start with, let's say this card represents iron. And we put this in the deck, right? It could be any piece of iron that you could have chosen. We let it oxidize. What happens when metal oxidizes? It changes color, that's right. Just like one card. You see, that sounds pretty stupid, but you see how it's original, it's unique, and that's the best way to find stories. Find things that it reminds you of in real life, and then build the other moments around that, okay? And that's a great way to get started in where you're gonna go with your story and build a story from there. It's important that I think you should relate your stories to other things you're passionate about and things you like as well, whatever that may be. Like if you like a certain sport, that's a great option. If you like a certain movie or something like that, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And if you're passionate about it, that'll come across to your audience and they will feel the passion, and the trick will be more interesting. Another great way to practice making your own stories is to take tricks that already have, concrete presentations or presentations that most people use or are very common, and totally scrap them. Like I was telling you I did with this one trick, totally scrap it and start from new. Same effect, don't change anything else, but create your own story, and that's a great way to practice. You can kind of know what a good presentation looks like, so after you've created yours, you can kind of compare it and see how yours ends up stacking up. So I want to give you some quick examples now. So in terms of like a trick where presentation really matters and takes it to the next level, so I have a trick called BNR, which stands for black and red, and I will be teaching this one day. It's a wonderful trick. So the effect is we take out 10 red cards, 10 black cards, shuffle them together. The spectator shuffles them, deals each of us a pile of 10 cards, and then we take turns guessing if the card's going to be black or red from each other's pile. So they guess for all my cards, they say black or red, we go through, I guess for all theirs, and then we make a pile of how many we get right, how many we get wrong. I get all 10 right, they get, usually about 5 of them right, depending on the probability. And then I say, I'm pretty good at this, I've developed some skills, so how about I try to teach you, I give a little explanation, and then I give them the cards, and basically a out of this world sort of happens, and they deal the cards into black red piles, we flip them, and they perfectly separated the cards. So that's the effect. Now, if we just did this trick with no real presentation, it would be strong, but the presentation with this trick makes it amazing. We start with a little bit of a game, and that's how the presentation starts. You want to play a game. Let's guess black or red. Let's see who can do better. I'm pretty good at this. And then I go into, I've had a lot of practice at this, and then I explain, it has to do with the pigment on the card, and the way the light refracts off the card is what makes you see color. So it kind of applies from the back of the card as well. So I want you to try, were you being more intuitive, or were you kind of taking your time with the thoughts? And I can go into this whole explanation, and I have a story, and then after I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you. So then they're very intrigued. And you can see how like a presentation like this makes people very interested in the trick, and it's very captivating. Games are another fantastic way of captivating people, something where it's you versus me, or people love that stuff. Another trick is my routine called the Gambler, which I did a very similar variation in one of the Sleight Off, I think episode 3, and I've done it on one of my Omegle Magic videos. It's a gambling demonstration, and the whole thing is about, this is how people cheat in poker, and then this is how you beat the cut in poker. This is how you beat it if someone else cuts. And it's just a demonstration of skill, but it's also a gambling demo. So people are really intrigued to know how people cheat, right? How people can gamble. And then any card at any number. Here's an example of a trick that I think does not need much of a story. Some people argue different. A lot of people say any card, any number is not a great trick for laymen, which I agree with. I'm obsessed with it as a magician, as the rest of us are, but for a layman, it's not that great. So it does need presentation, but a lot of people argue it needs a story, and I don't think that's true. I think it's best as in any card, any number, but you need to communicate that clearly to the audience of how impossible this is. The fact that they shuffled, they could have named any card, they could have named any number. Let them feel it, let them do the dealing. So I'm going to be teaching very soon. I'm filming right after this the tutorial for my favorite any card, any number, the one I use, my any card, any number, my favorite, most practical any card, any number. I love it, and I know you guys are going to love it too, so that'll be coming soon. But with that video, the trick is we're doing an any card, any number. I make that very clear, but they understand how impossible this is because of my presentation and how I explain, and the recapping I do at the end of the trick, saying, how impossible this is, and they did everything and all that stuff. So it is really great even without a hardcore story, right? All right, so I want to end this video on telling you guys how you can improve just your presentations in general. I've talked about my tips for building stories and presentations to your tricks, but how to improve. You want to practice your communication skills and confidence. That is important to be able to clearly relay your presentation and know what you're going to say. Be confident in yourself. That comes across. People get that, and that'll help with intrigue. Reading books. There are actually a lot of magic books that dive into presentation and important tips. Some of the older ones, I don't tend to agree with as much just because they're very heavy on, you got to tell a story and it's got to be this and that. But like I've hopefully conveyed in this video, it's not all about that. But there are a lot of great books out there. Invest in master classes. They're again, I can't think of any off the top of my head right now that's coming to mind, and I'll leave some in the description. But there is some really great material out there. So if you have some money and you want to invest in your presentation, it'll make a lot of difference. Performing, something I advocate for a lot. It can be on your friends, your family. Just get out there, perform, and you can tell when people are not intrigued. Be honest with yourself. You will know when people are not intrigued, and then you can know what to tweak and what you're good with. Like I said, creating your own presentations are very important, and that'll help you see how to build a good presentation, what works, what doesn't work, and then when you get out there and perform it, you'll get that real live feedback. Try tricks that are also reliant on, presentations. Practice, learn some of those, and go out there and perform ones that are really presentation heavy. Then the presentation is very important. Hey guys, so my camera cut out when I was filming the end of that video, so I'm just quickly filming the outro here a few days later. But as I was saying, just create your own presentations. Use some of the things I talked about and some of the skills and different ways to practice creating your own presentations, and you will have a lot of success in developing your presentation, your presentational skills. So I hope you guys liked that video. Very informative. Again, these videos don't tend to be as popular, but they are extremely important. So make sure you listen to some of the things I talk about. Presentation is a great skill, and it doesn't always have to be intense storytelling. There's a lot of different techniques, recapping, being funny, and visual moments that can add a lot to your presentation. So just keep that in mind. I want to welcome all the new subs. Thank you guys. We're at well over 780 and climbing, getting really close to 800, and I cannot wait for the future. I got a lot of great tutorials coming. My next 2 tutorials are super dope, 2 original things by myself, and I've been looking through my notes, and I got a ton of great original material that I've not shared with anyone that I'm going to share with you guys soon. And I really, now that we're approaching 1,000, really want to take the content up to the next level. So I hope you guys like that trick at the beginning of the video. That is Re-Swindled by Caleb Wiles. Great trick, one of my favorite tricks that doesn't really involve the spectator. They just get to watch a really nice piece of magic. So with all that said, guys, drop me a comment. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.